right, guys, welcome back for another episode of The Process. We are collaborating today with Beyond Clean. I have Hank Walsh with me and Justin Pulling. So we're going to sit down and have a little fireside chat about assignments and specializations today. All right, so this conversation is not SPH or HSPA related. Just some industry folks sitting down and having a conversation about what works and what doesn't in sterile processing field. We know every day we have to come in and do some assignment, right? Some facilities are doing them on a rotational basis. Others you might get assigned for a week at a time. Where's the happy medium? Does our consistency about having a tech that can go any area all the time really still make sense in the sterile processing industry? So I want to ask Hank, how do you feel about assignment? Should I just stay in one place and become a specialized tech, or should I be well-rounded and do a little bit of everything? We're going to cut to the intro. So welcome back to The Process. If you haven't already, please head over to YouTube, like, share, and subscribe, and make sure you do a search for Beyond Clean, but I'm sure you're already plugged in. So, hey, let's get into this conversation. Specialization or all-around expert? Which one works and why?
So I've got a small correction, maybe to start here at the beginning, because I know your info, you said it's not related to HSPA, but I actually just had a conversation in the hallway with a guy named Carlock, and he was talking about the difficulties in hiring and retaining high-quality technicians, the challenges around career ladders, and I brought up the same topic to him, and I said, I think something big has to disrupt the model before we get the changes that we want. It's just too broken, it's too systemic. It really has to be a major shift. Now, whether that's outsourcing, insourcing, offsite reprocessing, or potentially, and this is where the specialization topic comes up, maybe we change the way we've always done it. Boom.
Right,
where's the boom? And to that point, I have always been a major fan of specialization. And as you described, that's the idea that instead of expecting our technicians to know everything about the entire process, every specialty, every nuance, every regulation in all the areas of sterile processing, we do what countless other professions do in other industries around the globe. Airlines is a great example to use. You don't see the pilot loading the baggage or serving the peanuts. Why? Because the pilot specializes in flying the plane. But you do see the stewardess serving and making sure that everybody is feeling comfortable and safe and got their drinks and everything. Like, everyone has their own role in that airplane flight. And I think the same way in sterile processing, that if we really want to drive professional development, career growth, compensation, I think that we need to break the model on cross-training and push to a more standardized, a more specialized model of deep knowledge about a particular part of that sterile processing workflow.
But how are we responding to those folks that are going to say, what's when my decontam tech or my ortho specialist calls out and no one else can feel that way?
Right. Well, again, what happens when your neurosurgeon doesn't show up for the surgery? Does your bariatric surgeon, step in and do the brain procedure? No. If your pilot doesn't show up, does the baggage handler say, it's okay, guys, I'll fly the plane, don't worry about it? They've built a system in place around specialization to make sure that what if never happens. This is it's a shift. It's a big disruption in the industry to staff this way, to train this way, to certify this way. Another tie in HSPA, like we've built certifications historically based on a cross-training model that we're going to teach everybody how to do everything, and all of our certifications reflect that. If you went into a specialization model, you could build a certification like a decontamination certification. You really drill down deep into those topics, or into the assembly side, or into the sterilization side, and get much, much deeper than any broad survey certification would allow us to do. So, like, it really would be a game changer.
All right, let me throw a wrench into that. So
what Hold on, are you interviewing now?
What about, I am, that's what I do. I do interviews. You all are the SMEs. I just do the interviews. So, but what about size of facility? Because I think probably the biggest challenge, you know, and it's kind of like the reverse of does one size fit all here? Because we see a lot of movement towards these procedures going into surgery centers. Now, there may be specialization in that area by type of procedure, which is a different type of specialization, but it's the same concept.
Right.
Does it apply differently? That general idea apply differently in different settings?
I think so. I mean, I grew up in a small city, and each shift was 4 or 5 people, and even for our area, that was a large team. Some of these departments are running with 2, 3 techs, and like I said, we get out to the ASCs, it just be one, depending on how specialized we are. So in that case, can we even have a conversation like this? No, not really. But also to your point, those areas are generally focused on 1 or 2 service lines, which by default makes me a subject matter expert. What would it look like if I could take that knowledge and have a certification to back it up to be able to transfer wherever I want rather than being a special tech at this one place?
Right.
What about flexible scopes?
Well,
too?
that's exactly where I was going.
Yeah, because that just changes the game as well, because everybody's trying to move that into sterile processing, it seems like these days. And we already know how complicated all those steps are. I think maybe you don't specialize in everything. This is an area that you almost have to start with, right?
And we've seen HSPA do that, right? They came out with the CER certification a couple of years ago as like they weren't listening to me when they came up with certification, right? You know, but this is, they're identifying the need and the risk associated with getting it wrong, and they're drilling down into that deep specialized process. And I think we need to continue the trend and spread it across all these other areas of the department.
Question now for both of you guys. So in terms of a service level industry, most specialized professions at the closer to the patient or the customer, right? So this is basically almost a salesperson, almost an entry level. So most of the entry level or further from the customer are usually not specialized. So you have the nutrition, you have dietary, you may be washing dishes, you may be serving the patient's meals, you may be cartoning the goods from the truck. So how would you balance that, being that it's far from the patient or the customer to have that specialization?
Right.
But the instruments that you're handling are direct contact to the patient. So conceptually, you can make that comparison, but actually in practice, you're not far away from the patient. You are one touch away, right? And so I think that's a big piece of it, you know. And just to kind of go back to, if you think about like car mechanics, right? Somebody learns how to work on Hondas. Somebody learns, now over time they may have multiple areas of specialty, but the whole basis of them learning how to be a mechanic is in certain areas or certain makes and models. So I think an important caveat to this conversation is just because somebody specializes doesn't mean they're limited. And I think not limiting in specialization is how we make sure that things are still flexible. In that very first question that you asked, Hank, you know, what happens when, what happens if?
Right.
I mean, we're not going to have people flying planes and, you know, coming down and serving drinks because that's not safe. But I do think that multiple areas of specialty is safe as long as the competency backs it up.
Something else that is important for us to remember is we're not in these episodes. And like even for food and nutrition, they are specialized. You have in-house dining now, you have inpatient dining, you have phone operators, you have trade delivery. They're not cross-training, they're
got the
staying in
chef.
silos.
I mean, the
Right.
chef's not delivering
Right.
the food. And the deliverer of the food's not cooking the burgers, thankfully. Yeah. That's a great point.
So it begs the question for me, is the CRCST still that foundation that I need if I can go out and be a CER, I can go out and be a DPTAM tech. If I decide I want to take a DPTAM certification, that's where I want to live, do I need to go through this other process in order to play in this field?
That's a really
So I've got a hot mic here, and we are live. I'm not a fan of requiring or legislating certification in the country. I got for that. That's probably a conversation.
Whoa. Say that again.
One time is enough.
Let me repeat. I am not a fan of legislating required certification in the country. Primarily, this goes to this conversation, not because it doesn't work or because certification is not good, but because I have not seen the data. I have not seen the hard data that says a certified technician is better, smarter, safer, faster, all of those things. Now, show me the data. I'll support your bill. Without the data, all you're saying is, trust me, we think it's good. This is what we've always done. Let's just expand it and now have the state require it. To the point about specialization, then, what we know about the industry today is there's a lot of challenge recruiting, there's a lot of challenge retaining. Everybody is complaining about the money that they're making. And all I'm saying is we should not fall into the definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing and expecting different results. Try specialization. Look at the data. And there is data in other industries about specialization leading to better quality, which is, again, why we see so much specialization in surgery. Like you can see like nurses specializing as an ortho nurse or as a CVOR
But you still
nurse.
have that foundational nursing degree before specialization, which is why I really like the way you position that question about the CRCS.
I didn't really get that, I guess.
Right, because it's real. Like, we have to go back to it because I think what you're describing is that we do need to be disruptive and we do need to get data. We need to show, proof that the model works instead of continuing to do something when we don't know. We're also not saying it doesn't work.
Right.
We just don't know.
Yep.
But we can't make good decisions, make tweaks and improvements unless we know. But that foundational knowledge, just back to the CRCST, I think that's what that's supposed to be.
Right.
And so, however it happens, whether you're not required by the state through the legislature to have a certification or not, the facility still has a responsibility. The healthcare system has a responsibility to establish and identify foundational knowledge, because you're not getting it necessarily in a tech school or in another program like you would with a nursing degree. That foundational knowledge is just not as established in our industry. So one way or another, it's got to be done, whether you do it in-house as a system or you utilize the certification process to do it.
Yeah, I think that one of the elements in the room for the equity of compensation for those persons in every specialized area, if that model is accepted, do you pay someone more in time or more in impact?
This is a really interesting part of the conversation. And before we shift to it, especially from the process standpoint, I do want to solidify. I also do not think we should be legislating certification. What?
Drop the ball.
And is that why we put them in the middle?
This is not playing.
You are
playing.
We have not talked about this.
And my logic behind it is for monetary extent. If this certification is not going to equate with a higher rate of pay for these folks, then what truth is this?
Wow.
And data isn't there to say or not it's helping or hurting, but the social stigma on the ground is a new tech, a baby tech that has gone through a course and or has self-studied and took the certification is not ready to work. So if the certification is preparing me for the job, I can't clock in and do this.
Right.
Where's the benefit?
Yeah.
What's the benefit for me as an individual, and where is the benefit for me as an industry? Because as an industry, we want to get paid. That's what they all complain about. And what I learned yesterday from being here at the conference and going through the town hall with Siri Sorensen is that as a certification body, they actually cannot advocate for higher pay, right?
I found that out.
And
Found that
so
out a few years
that
ago.
it blew my mind because I'm saying to them, there's this stigma that you just don't care that we don't get paid.
Right.
And she was adamant, absolutely not. We want you lifted up, but we cannot legally touch that area. So how are we moving?
I don't think I understood that that was a legal thing,
I
but that definitely, you know,
I disagree. I disagree with that part of it. I think it definitely makes their legislative, their lobbying much more difficult. It's something we've talked about, like the hospital association. You start talking about increasing pay, and they're like, we don't even want to talk.
but they
about
are
that.
increasing pay. They're paying
Well, they are
3 to
now.
4 times, you know, their starting rates for travelers now because
Right.
there's nobody out there.
the loveliness of the travel situation is from a financial standpoint. Oh, the two different buckets, and one's being looked at with a microscope, and the other one is reflex. So
Yeah. So your point that you brought up, though.
Yeah, but they're going to figure it out.
oh yeah,
The sea level
I mean,
is going to
even-
figure it out that if
even
they don't
from
get a
a-
handle on this,
even from a
It's
state
gonna be a problem.
standpoint, they're starting to legally come after how much you earn over a base rate because they don't know who's on their permanent staff.
Right. Right. And I mean, like you made a point, like about if you're not able to work with certification, like if you're not viewed as a quality tech after certification, what does that really mean? We see that highlighted in the traveler space. All these travel companies have a standard of you cannot become a traveler
right?
until at least 1 or 2 years in the industry. Well, if it's 1 or 2 years, then where is that certification even coming into play? Like they do require certification, but it's not tied to that date range. So there's something happening there, which is our argument is a technician is no more qualified the day before they take their exam than the day after.
And honestly, I'm gonna go a little more close before I switch back to this question. But if we know that you're actually not required to take a course in order to sit the exam, that was something else I was fascinated to learn because there's this plethora of fees being charged. I've known techs to pay $30,000 to get this certification.
And we talked about who talked to you about that?
I
Insanity,
think it was Harry Ball.
Oh yeah.
right? So yeah, California space is a total racket, right? So we're bringing these people in under that guise. Now, in this entity, we could say we don't do education. That has nothing to do with it. But it's our people that are being subjected to this, and they're going into debt.
Yeah, it's a
They're
shame.
going into home loans. They're
Yeah.
getting trapped to these predatory lending situations. To go get a certification, it's only going to pay you $7.25 in some places,
Right.
maybe up to $30 in other markets.
You know, though, certification never drove pay, nor did, you know, me getting a registered nurse degree didn't necessarily make me get higher pay. I just got what the market dictates for nurses. And so the market's going to dictate what the pay rate's going to be regardless. So the reasons to do certification should not be tied to compensation. The reasons to do certification is for self-fulfillment. It's part of your own career and professional development. Those are the reasons to, if you choose to do certification. That's what it's about. It's also a self-acknowledgement. You're testing yourself. Like, I think it is a good indicator of commitment and passion. And if I were a hiring manager, I would definitely be looking for that because I want people who are self-motivated and self-starters. So it's not to tear down certification, but when we tie certification to the compensation discussion, we're failing ourselves because that should never be the motivation for you to continue your education and your learning. The monetary piece is you're going to choose this profession. You're going to know what the market rate is. And that's a completely different issue that does need to be addressed. But at the end of the day, eventually the C-level is going to figure out, or they already are seeing it, but they're seeing it in the OR with nurses.
Yes.
Like, this is not siloed just to sterile processing. This issue is hitting hospitals across the board and other industries with the workforce shortages. And that's a problem. But it's going to be the travel pay that ultimately, when they look at retention, they're going to start seeing that the compensation whether you cap it or not, if you don't have revenue generating, you're going to fight that cap. You're going to have an override process.
Yes.
You're still going to get to the numbers because we don't get to control the pay. The market decides, and the market has decided.
But this certification indicator of competence for
That's good.
Well, no,
That's a good
So
point, too.
competency is different than certification. And so that's why when you hire somebody into the department, you have a process for establishing competencies. That's why I say foundational information. Certification says that you have some foundational knowledge. Competency is about applying that foundational knowledge repeatedly and correctly. And so that's something that still falls very much on the department managers, the educators, the healthcare organization. But competency is a different conversation than certification. The idea is if you get certified and you have the foundational knowledge, you should be, not guaranteed to be, and the data may not be there to support it, but biologically, if you have certification, you should be able to do competency better. Doesn't mean you will, doesn't mean that the
You've
data
been
says
exposed
that.
to the information through the certification
Correct.
training program. Yeah, but then it's up to you to apply the information.
And so I know that I've created econ positions. I've done this conversation with compensation. I think you've done this as well, right?
Yeah.
So for us, when it came time to decide how much are they going to get paid, it was more of a marketing and compensation conversation to go, okay, now where do they fall in this ladder that we already have?
Mhm.
So we've got Tech 1s, Tech 2s, supervisors, managers. First, we have to decide where does a decon tech land?
Right.
And I think even this is a conversation because Arcus ultimately decided that it was the bottom,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
So they came in, I believe, right above the transporter, which allowed them to make $17 over the 15 for transport, but it kept them under the 18 to 19 of the Tech 1. Now, would you say a decon specialist is a Tech 1?
I would personally flip that model just because we know, like you talk to any sterile processing technician out there, everybody knows the majority of people do not prefer decontamination. There are some weirdos out there who love decon. Okay, I had a
We love you,
Professionals.
yes, yes.
Shift goes quick.
I had
Right.
a shirt that said like I'd rather be in decon, But there's some weird people out there that want it, But for the most part, it is hard to find people who want to do it and do it very well. It is very physically taxing. It's hot. You're sweating, you're turning, you're lifting, your exposure, all kinds of risks. It's a very hard place to work. So that would be, for me, the highest pay rate.
It's the most
in that
connected to whether or not the instruments are going to be safe. If that job isn't done right,
It's the
then
foundation.
and even operationally on the rework, if it's not done well, then we add all kinds of extra work into the system to fix it.
Well, with the advent of all these enzymatic detergents, the way they perform on the instruments, the mechanical washing, sonics, it might be one of the easiest steps to get by with all the added assistance through new technology. The inspection process is usually you may have a boroscope or a magnifying glass.
I still have to check all those instruments. I have to brush them off. I have to move all these pieces. None of that should make it through onto the side. You even have to work as hard as I have to. And then from a cleaning perspective, there's a whole lot more that I have to be concerned about than an assembly set. Got to be worried about these batteries, these cords, what things can be submerged, not how long. I have to deal with it.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it does come back to what Justin said: is it's the market. It's going to tell us how much we have to pay people to do those jobs. And I think that we're in agreement that typically you're going to have to pay the decontaminators more to do those jobs than to do the assembly or to do the sterilization storage. So,
Well,
Actually,
incentive for
I
less
don't think
desirable.
that's the case.
Yeah.
But
And the reason why I say that is because the systems that I've seen do this, I don't know what it looks like at your facility, but the systems that I've seen do this, once they create that decontam position, it's entry level, no certification. So we're pulling
Really?
EPS, we're
yeah,
pulling.
exactly.
Okay, so from their concepts, they should not be hired.
yeah.
But I completely agree. It is top.
Yeah, it
I mean,
won't be as specialized. You're like, okay,
Especially if you got
you're learning, so go to Digo, and then if you get good, you're gonna stay back there.
Wow.
And I
Wow.
had a team
That's a real problem.
Yeah, it really
conduct
is.
an ergonomics study from my DM. I had a particularly rowdy union that told me I was trying to kill them all by having them in decontam for 2 days straight. So I'm like, who are you? Let's get the data, right? So we brought in the ergonomics team and they did an assessment. And the report that they brought back to us was, after the 3rd day, you really are putting this person at a major risk.
Mm-hmm.
So we took that into consideration when it came to assignments, and we discontinued you're going to be in decontam for 1 week at a time. Now, with the creation of these positions, you're going to be in decontam anytime you're here.
Forever. Yeah.
Well, no, not so. That's where the layered part of the specialization comes into play. So I think you have a career path in the specialization model, but then once you become specialized in multiple areas, that doesn't necessarily have to happen. What I don't like about the way that was described, is, hey, you're coming in, you're new, we're going to stick you in decon. It reminds me of being in a fraternity and getting hazed. If we want to encourage people to come into this profession and be welcomed and wanted, and they want to stay and build that culture, we can't haze people on the way in.
Right.
And what does it say about us, if you will, as an industry? If we're looking at decontamination as this menial thing that doesn't really matter to anybody to do.
Yeah.
Not everybody wants to do overtime. There's a reason you get time and a half pay.
There you go.
And so a similar concept, I think, applies to the less desirable jobs in the department by making them more desirable, because people are motivated by different things.
Right.
And so the same way people are motivated to travel, even if it's just across town, for much higher pay rates, because I can just go do this job and be a traveler, and maybe I don't have as much consistency and safety of being a direct employee. At the same time, the same idea works in motivating people to be in decon, because you want to align yourself with what individuals desire in their professions. Some people are very money motivated, and they're going to go do that job because that's their primary motivator.
I mean, and I thought about that when we were talking about money shouldn't be the motivation for you to gain the certification. And absolutely, I feel like if you're working in the field and you're not certified, the money aspect should be the reason why you go get it. You should want the depth of knowledge before especially, we're talking about great resignations.
Right.
We have people that are coming into this industry looking for from the positions that they were previously working. So their mindset is, if I can go get this test, that's going to mean more funds for me. And I think some of us are not quite ready for the fact that that's going to be new money for people that aren't actually sitting there going, I want more. This is more for me.
But instead of the aligned roles that you're playing in the department, somebody who is taking on flexible scopes, just knowing the risks that are involved with all the infections we've seen, the complexity, the amount of steps, what happens to a department when all of a sudden there's a glitch in the process, somebody doesn't know what they're doing. It's pretty big hitter. Gets on the radar pretty fast. The question is, do you want to align the certification and the competency and the specialization in all one model, or are these
that's the only option
pieces
out there right now, and that's why you see people doing it. Is like the only thing they have to build a career ladder is certification, and they're building everything on this model again, that at the base of it, we don't have the data proof, we don't have the market research proof, and I'm saying that we're building on sand.
So what happens to your super tech? Choice, okay, I'm going to be on the traffic pack side. So am I going to take a pay cut? I know everything you need on. Am I taking a pay cut?
Yeah.
Why don't we compensate? And this would be different than certification. Why don't we compensate people once they master all the different different specialties, right? So the specialization is just a way to look at staffing model. It's a way to build people. You get one specialization, maybe you have a certain knack, but then those super techs, once you achieve competency and specialization in whatever, 4 or 5 areas, but see, now I've accomplished it and I get a pay bump of
Micro
differential.
credential.
Right. So that pay differential kicks in because you now have a super tech who gives the department immense flexibility. And it also gets the staff aligned with growing and showing competency or managing their quality, because we definitely need to look at data. Just because they can specialize in everything doesn't mean that they can effectively perform at that level in all of those specialties if they're rotating around all the time.
All right. I do want to throw out, I don't want to get us off this topic, but Justin's bringing up good points. So glad that we had you join this interview.
Give us a question.
It was a good decision after all. Okay. No, I also am a fan of us trying to think through and trying to find a way to incentivize quality in production in individuals. Because we're talking about pay, but we're still talking about paying everybody the same thing, regardless of how much work you're producing.
You and I have been talking about this for like 3 years.
Question.
You're going to let our ideas
Regardless,
right on the process. You're giving them the big. This is the real bomb.
And regardless of how much quality output they have, everybody the same. I think that's a problem.
Quality
What
and
is it
production.
gonna look
Right.
like for you as a technician if you're able to shop yourself with a resume and say, I am high productivity, high quality technician. I got the data to back this up. Right?
Yeah.
So think about this too. Think about this. One of the things that's going on and it's going to shift. There's only so many workers in general, and a lot more work is available online. People are going to start being self-employed because that's how high performers ultimately get paid their value. Instead of being so I think you can hack or disrupt the industry by bringing that high performer rewarding model into regular staffing, because the people who do more, that are motivated to do more, get rewarded for doing more, but it's not an expectation for everybody. Everybody else just gets paid for what they can and want to do, and then they manage their workload. The only thing that really puts you at risk is that does create some variability on your day-to-day. Like, you need to be able to say, we can put out this much. But the other thing that you get when people are paid on that is you get some pretty good, I know who's going to be there, and we've got productivity and quality metrics on that. And so we can actually see how much I can get done that day with these people there. What's the surgery looking like? What types of cases?
We've all had that technician that consistently puts out 30, 40, 50 trays a day. And it's like, if I can have 2 or 3 of you, I don't even need a department.
That's right.
Right?
But that creates resentment. And then the problem is they become demotivated. Why? Because somebody else, they feel like, is holding the team back while they're doing all the work. And so if the pay is commensurate, then it changes that.
I feel like as an industry, that cream of the crop folks that are out there, high productivity, high quality, you got to make it uncomfortable for people here around you to not be excellent. We need to separate, how they say that, the shaft from the wheat.
Yeah.
We need that. And I think ASCs are going to put that market in place, because in ASC, I may have 1 to 5 techs, and I get to pick it up.
No nights, no weekends, no holidays. That's a great place to work.
Great place to work.
As an aside, as the previous one showed me, I'm shopping around my resume, right? I do 50 trays an evening, but as a manager, I only see what you ever really sold.
Right.
Don't get that out.
Yeah,
That's
no,
right.
exactly.
Yeah, that's the quality piece.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah,
get
no.
that out. Yeah, I know you're doing 50 trays, you're doing decon, prep and pack, sterilization, but whatever.
And how does that get access? So, like, we have tracking systems, we have all this data, but it's on the management side.
Right.
Are the techs able to download and print off? Are they able to get a quality report of themselves to take home and have
I'm a
it?
big
should.
fan. If you create a highly competitive environment like that, that is not demotivating to the people, but like you said, everybody holds a certain standard. and then they see that their monetary reward is aligned with performance and quality, production and quality, I should say, overall performance. If you create that kind of environment, there's no reason not to have dashboards up. There's no reason not to have visibility of who's where on the team. Because the people who are really upset about it or don't like it are then going to strive for improvement.
This, I think, I'm going to make the loosest sports analogy because I have the slightest clue what I'm trying to say. But if I'm on an NBA team, the assumption is everybody here is NBA level, right? And I'm going to put my stats up because I want to show you that I belong here on this team.
Right.
So I feel like there is a positive way that it can be done where you're creating a team of NBA All-Stars, if you will,
right,
and that aren't afraid to put up the stats.
And the pushback is always, well, if you start incentivizing people, paying them more to produce more, that the quality is going to suffer. Like that's always the pushback.
Which is why that's a key piece to how that plays out.
Yeah, that's why that's key. Like Denard asked, like, what about the quality? Yeah, and that is not.
We want both.
Yes,
we want both.
Both psychotic.
Are you on the bench?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, because everybody plays a different role.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
If you look at our surgeons, like look at those orthopedic surgeons who are driving volume. No one's sitting that surgeon down and being like, I can't believe that you got that many procedures going through. Why? Because there's a certain level of quality that they cannot, will not compromise. That needs to be where we get as an industry, as we all know. There's a certain level of quality that you cannot, will not compromise. But there's also that production of you got multiple patients that are waiting for surgery tomorrow, and all 25 of those need their trays. Let's drive those all-stars, those super techs, incentivize them, and specialize them, and see the industry get better.
But not to go off tangent though, what about those surgeons booking those cases on turnarounds, putting those patients at risk?
Right.
You know, so yeah, they've got high volume, low error rates. But when you have 10 cases and you only have 8, 5, 6, 7 sets.
I love this question. Okay. Right. Sterile processing, and I want all you sterile processing techs, all 10,000 of you right now that are tuning in, I want you to listen to this. We have gotten too good at making it work. We've gotten too good at being the miracle worker that no matter what, however many turnarounds, however few staff members, however few trays, we do miracles every single day. The problem is that's not a sustainable, scalable model. That's why we have so much burnout. That's why we do have errors that make it through the process, because everybody is so focused on making all this magic happen. There's no margin for error. Yeah, that's where we get it.
Something catastrophic happens.
Yes.
The system collapses.
Who
And
can blame?
there's never a better time to talk about that than what we just learned about in supply chain over the last 2 years. The minute we were running just in time, and then the minute catastrophe hit, we were not able to sustain, we were not able to survive.
Like staffing is something that C-suite management up here started. They're gonna have to deal with the things that they created. It was never okay for us to flex down to the bare minimum and then watch the influx come in and then watch these people make it happen, right? So for so long now, it's expected that that's what they're gonna do. And not to Dee's point, we're not next to the patient, but also like Justin was saying, actually nobody gets close to us. And we just saw this case with this nurse who was probably suffering from burnout, probably was understaffed,
And they had a culture of shortcuts.
Had a culture of shortcuts, which is predominant across the healthcare industry. Lost a patient and is now facing 18 years prison, right? So as facilities and industries, it is incumbent on us to take a look at this and like Hank was saying, you can't keep doing the insanity thing.
Yeah.
It's clearly not working.
You gotta have the transparency, and it's hard. Like I know it's hard as a department leader. It's hard as a technician to admit to your administrators that you're taking shortcuts, or that hey, like this is not sustainable, because it makes it, especially for a leader, like you kind of feel like that you're failing in your job duty because you just can't get it done with the resources that you have. But that's the reality. You can't, and you need to communicate that on a regular basis to your C-suite, if for nothing else to cover your butt when the issue happens, because then you can say, I've been telling you every single day in the safety meetings that this is not okay.
And here's the email,
Yeah.
the meeting minutes.
Yeah, but if you're just quietly down there doing your job, working your miracles constantly, and they're like, what happened? How did this happen? Like, well, then you're in a rock and a hard place because you've never told anybody how razor thin that margin is.
Because you have to look at scope creep, right? So things don't change automatically from 2 cases to 15 cases. Slowly, they see you can do 3, they see you can do 5, they bring it up to 7.
Add a robot.
Add a robot in there. So you definitely have to look at scope creep because that'll definitely keep you in a bind, and then all the more you need more FTEs.
Right.
Then you're stuck. Because, okay, yeah, we do cases now. We can't give you FTEs because it's not your budget. So
Right.
then you end up paying for it at the end in the long run.
And the great Justin brought it up. Not about FTEs. Our administrators, that's how they look at sterile processing. A body is a body is a body is a body. We were just talking about our super techs. You lose one super tech, you are losing probably 2 or 3 FTEs, and you're replacing them with a brand new who's not even 1 FTE. They're probably half an FTE. If it's brand new, we all start there, But that's how you get these departments. They look fully staffed on paper, but you have lost 300 years of experience and replaced it with 0 years of experience. Like that's what's happening again and again and again in this great resignation.
And it might be a little controversial to say, but I honestly feel like as management, you are not doing your job when you consistently cover and don't report. Especially if you're that manager that's always on the floor. And I know this hurts us to hear, but that's not the position you're in. It's not where you belong. You moved out of that tech position and you took on these responsibilities as a manager. And every minute that you're on the floor doing trays, in decontent, running sterilizers, are minutes that you're not in your office.
Right.
You're not having these meetings with the C-suite. You're not advocating for what your department
That was the
needs.
word I was looking for. That's your number 1 job.
That's your
Is
job.
to advocate, and you're advocating for the patient, the department, and the hospital, their own well-being.
Right.
Advocating from your area of expertise.
Yes.
I think it's a myth that there is such a thing as a working manager.
Yes.
Like, we use that phrase all the time, and honestly, like, it's a badge of honor for a lot of people. They're like, no, I'm in the trenches. I'm wrapping the trays. Doing those things. Now that's good. Like,
in the morning, decontent in the
Yeah.
afternoon.
if you need to do it, step up and do it. Like, totally. But your point, if that's all you're ever
Can't be
doing,
the norm.
if you're just an echo tech who has a job title and a higher paycheck, then yeah, you're missing a huge opportunity to take your department forward because you're just never getting out of the trenches. Yeah.
I think it's valuable, especially from the team building aspect. Your staff needs to know that you're competent and that you can do this work. It gets you the respect. So from that standpoint, I think there should be some regularity. What that looks like for you, probably different for all folks. But if you're finding that you're always on the floor covering, you don't have sufficient staffing, you're putting your entire team in disservice for not allowing that to highlight itself.
Okay.
Sometimes you got to let the bottom drop out.
Right.
Sometimes I have to tell you, we actually can't meet that expectation,
Right.
so that it raises the flag high enough to say, what do you need?
Right.
Right? Because a lot of times for SPE, it's not when my sterilizer shuts down that we get to shut down. It's when that OR room shuts down.
Right.
Right? You're expected to keep moving. I've had it where, and I know we probably all have had it where all my sterilizers are down. I'm still expected to figure it out.
Right.
Whether that's sister facility,
Yeah.
whatever that is, I have to figure that out. So if we allow it to just consistently be covered, are we not doing ourselves a service by allowing people to think that we're here without a miracle thing?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel black right now. It doesn't feel black.
So the last thing I'll add just about this conversation is I've already kind of talking about it's going to take a disruptive interference, I think, to really get us to that next level of pay and professionalism. And I think a lot of that, and I forget who brought it up, but it's this outsource offsite reprocessing challenge that's coming in, because if we know anything about private businesses or businesses in general, they're willing and able oftentimes to incentivize much higher and differently, tied to revenue, tied to performance. It got much more freedom than a lot of our hospitals do to do that. And I think, as hard as it is, and like some people disagree that it's a good thing, but either way, it's probably coming, and I think it's going to be a good thing on the backside because of the impact it's going to have the wages and opportunity for growth.
That's the problem is when we started this conversation, I was saying, should assignments be rotated or should I be specialized? But to your point, this really is a conversation about whether or not it's going to happen. It has to happen. It's already happened. We did it with CIS, CER. Now micro-credentials are on the scene. This is the truth. Right. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this collaboration between Beyond Clean and the process. We are so thrilled to be here in San Antonio at the HSPA conference. If you weren't able to make it, please make sure you still network in the comments. Everybody is active on LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, you name it. Get in the game. Have your own opinion about this. Everybody is shopping for thought leaders right now. Everybody wants to see what you guys bring to the table. And I think even this conversation is an awesome opportunity for you guys to weigh in on what does the industry look like where you're at and where do you want to go. Thank you so much, Justin, for coming on with us.
Absolutely. We always have awesome conversations.
Thank you, Hank, for putting this opportunity out there to us. We so appreciate it.
I invited myself, but that's a way you can get on people's podcasts. Just invite yourself.
Thank goodness they invited me.
Thank you so much to everybody that's tuned in. If you're on LinkedIn, please share this with a tech that could use this conversation. If you're on YouTube, make sure you like, share, and subscribe on the Process platform and the Beyond Clean platform. Thank you to everybody that took the time out of your day to be here with us. And that's another one, guys. Peace.
Are you dancing? All right. Yeah. But let me dance.
Peace.
Bye-bye now.